Assalamu alaikum. Hello, good evening, everyone. Hope you all are doing well. Today, we've gathered for a very interesting discussion around a topic which has really come to the forefront due to the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm Asra Masood. I'm Assistant Manager, Communications and Research at Teamup. Today's discussion is about mental health and how important it is for organizations to implement policies which drive employees towards well-being, especially in a post-COVID world. So before we start the discussion and I introduce my esteemed panelists for today, I would like to request the audience to please post your questions, which we will answer either during the session or towards the end. So those of you who are joining us on Zoom, you can write your questions in the Q&A section, and those who are joining us from Facebook, you can post your questions in the comment section. So starting off with the introductions, the format of today's panel discussion is very interesting because we have none other than the expert herself, Dr. Farah Qadir, moderating the discussion with me. So a brief introduction about Dr. Farah. She has experience spanning over 2 decades in teaching, research, practicing psychotherapy, epidemiology, counseling, and coaching with culturally diverse populations globally. Her research expertise is in the field of mental health and well-being among vulnerable groups, including women, youth, and elderly. As a practitioner, she's offered services in hospitals, workplaces, and community, helping them cope with common mental disorders and work towards well-being. She's qualified to conduct personality and ability tests in individual, educational, and organizational contexts. She has a proven background of results in supporting leaders, senior executives, and teams to excel and deliver their optimum performance. Good evening, Dr. Farah. Welcome to the webinar. We look forward to hearing your thoughts around today's topic besides you moderating the discussion with me.
Thank you. Thank you, Asra.
On our panel, we have Richard Palmer, who's a human resource business partner at ACCA, a member of the Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development with over 19 years of experience as a human resource generalist and 10 years operating as a strategic human resource business partner. Richard has operated in a wide range of industry sectors from manufacturing, consulting, and legal prior to joining ACCA. Welcome, Richard. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here and look forward to the discussion.
Great. We also have with us Ms. Alia Zafar, the country head HR division of Askari Bank Limited. Alia has diverse experience in large corporate, public, and development sector organizations in areas relating to human resource management, organizational transformation and capacity development, policy and governance, youth inclusion and gender, restructuring, and business process reengineering. Previously, she has served at the World Food Programme, UNDP, White Tribe, HPL, and Federal Board of Governors. She's also a recipient of the Suraya Saldi Award for Social Entrepreneurship and is also a certified director from Institute of Chartered Accountants in Pakistan. Good evening, Alia. Welcome on board.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me here. So looking forward.
Wonderful. Also joining us in today's panel is Mr. Hassan Arshad, who is the Head of Organizational Development and Talent at Bestway Cement. Hassan is a seasoned HR professional with more than 15 years of corporate HR experience. He's a coach, trainer, assessor, counselor, and has served in leading roles in the telecom, non-profit, and manufacturing sector. Hassan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. My pleasure.
So starting off with the session, I would like to quickly set the rules to take the discussion forward. So we have 4 rounds of questions, and in each round, 1 question will be asked from each panelist. And I request each panelist to kind of wind up their answers in around 2 to 3 minutes. And at the end of each round, I will request Dr. Farah to give a few concluding remarks so we can wrap up the round. So moving forward with the first round of questions, and before answering each question, I would like all the panelists to briefly introduce their organization and their job roles so we can set a context for discussion. So my first question is that well-being and mental health is a very broad area. And my first question from all panelists is that as a professional, how do you define well-being and how relevant is it to your organizational vision and values? I would like to start off with Richard Palmer, who's presenting an international qualification body of professionals. So over to you, Richard.
Absolutely, and thank you very much. So, as you rightly say, I work for the ACCA, and for us, it is fundamental and core to our values, our employee well-being. It is something that we have policies on, and we have a very broad range of different facilities that we use to target employees and make sure that their mental well-being, their well-being in general, is something that is front and center of everything we do. And we also make sure that our managers at all levels of the organizations are appropriately skilled and prepared to be able to deal with some of the challenges that come with well-being. Certainly through the COVID pandemic, we have created a COVID hub on our intranet, which has a very specific section on well-being, mental health, to help all of our employees, and is something that I think they've greatly valued over this time, but also it's been really good for us to assess and think about where we are with it, how we can help employees, and how we can make it easier for employees and managers to get the information they need on a real-time basis.
That's a wonderful initiative. I really like the idea of the COVID Hub. Can you briefly tell us how exactly does it operate? So you do have a mental health expert on board. Can you briefly explain how it works?
Sure. So we don't have an individual that is targeted towards mental health. We have an expert from within our employee relations team up in Glasgow, who was tasked couple of years ago and last year with looking and focusing specifically on mental health well-being. So put a lot of work into what we were doing and how we were doing it. And the hub itself is something that's on our internet, available to all, gives hints and tips on how people can help their well-being. It links them to a number of well-being champions that are positioned across the globe in our various different portfolios, and links them also to mental health, what we call first aiders as well. So it basically ties in a number of different resources for employees and for line managers to help them get the most out of their own personal well-being, their own personal mental health, and they also communicate a number of different things out. They have a Monday communication that goes out to all with some kind of information, hints, tips, even if it's just some positive quotes, for example, or how to exercise daily, or things that people might want to think about. So it's really just a tool to bring all of that together that's easy to find and easy to use.
That's a wonderful initiative. Thank you, Richard. I would like to move on to Ms. Alia Zafar, who's representing the banking service sector. Alia, can you please share your views with us?
Thank you very much. So for the banking sector, it was because it's a service sector. So during COVID, we were very much operational, and that meant that we had a number of challenges that we were facing at the same time. So for this purpose, we had a BCP arrangement, and we also came up with another component, which was essentially looking at the crisis management and crisis response. We created these teams. We have these teams now pretty much in place for the last 5 months. And our approach has been that for mental health and for support, you require all the leadership and all the business functions to be part of this business continuity plan and part of the crisis management team as well. The reason being that communication from each and every level, one-on communication or communication going from the corporate communications to all the employees, requires a strong leadership which comes out of compassion. So the compassion or the compassionate part of every human being needs to be engaged pretty much. So we have actually devised a multiple-pronged approach, I would say, in which we were in contact with all the COVID cases that were coming up, for example, and we had a 24/7 support for them. And this support included especially the mental health segment, in the sense that these people had to, of course, go into isolation, their families. So we were actually giving a very complete support, not just only the health insurance, for example, or the hospitalization, but having people to speak to whenever they felt down under, having somebody to call to. Our team was in contact, including myself, day and night with all of them, and taking them through that journey, which was very tough. It was tough for everyone, but I think it was extremely rewarding as well. So our focus has been a very humanistic and extremely empathetic. And we've actually brought that element of a person-to-person contact, which we were missing otherwise in COVID, and which was one of the major challenges, I think, in terms of mental health, and brought it all together by creating this huge team, which was working 24/7 last 4 or 5 months now. Now, of course, you don't have cases, so it's gone down, but the team remains. So that's the way we have actually managed it.
That's wonderful. And I guess one thing which COVID has really taught all of us is, the importance of showing empathy towards others. And it's wonderful to see that organizations, especially in Pakistan, if they're embracing this, phenomena and actually accepting the fact that, employees need to be, treated with empathy. So it's wonderful to know that, such initiatives are being taken in, the banking services sector as well. Thank you, Alia. Moving on to you, Mr. Hassan, you are a trained coach and your organization is a part of international group of companies. Can you please share your opinion on, how do you define well-being and how relevant is it to your organizational vision?
Thank you. So I would not have opted to be part of this panel, let's say a year ago. I, enrolled into a psychotherapy program and I did the certificate and now I'm a diploma student. So hence I felt much more relevant to be here. So thank you. Well-being to me, if I would define it in one word, it would be recognizing your own emotions and why they are happening. What are they doing to me? So if every individual is able to recognize his or her emotions and feelings and the why part of it, then the person is quite in a well-being state. What happens is that people are unable to recognize why they are doing what they are doing. That is the reason their behaviors become so carved in stone over time that they start accepting their behaviors as good. And when it comes to organizations, let's say there is an organization of 2,000 people. So 2,000 people are bringing their individual personalities. And it is possible that many of them are wounded. They are wounded emotionally, they are wounded inside, and their patterns and behaviors may hamper others. Somebody who did not, was not loved enough, will not love enough his or her team. So wellness is an extremely important part of any organization. Coming to my organization, I would say there has been a growing awareness of uh, this whole program. We are a company which has grown organically as well as inorganically. We have developed our business in Pakistan in the cement industry. We have acquired 2 plants and we have made 2 of our own plants. So it has been exponential growth over the years. So with this came a lot of responsibility related to people. And 2015 was a watershed year for us where we acquired Lafarge, Pakistan. And it was an amalgamation of a different culture with us. And that is where we retained their counselor services. We had an in-house counselor who would visit all the factories and speak to various individuals. That counseling service is right now in the phase of we are redetermining its application in the business. Coming to COVID, yes, a lot of talk has been done, and I'm sure at NIC you guys have listened to all these buzzwords that it was unprecedented and all of that. I would just say we did a lot of simple things. We have a lot of workers in our factory who don't have a Facebook at work or a Zoom or something. So we resorted to good old SMS. Once a week or twice a week, we would send something like this, that we are all in this together. Please don't be hard on yourself, because there was this whole idea of getting into Udemy and Coursera and upskilling yourself. So it was me who sent a text that, guys, if you are unable to really, pick up speed on these e-learning courses, that's okay. Please don't be hard on yourself. So we got some very good response. We also provided a platform on which people would speak their heart out through a campaign called Apart Yet Together. They will send us their picture working from home and what are they feeling. So that was a very low cost initiative, but today we concluded it and we have received some very good response. So sometimes you don't need to really go, into complex models of psychology. Sometimes it's all basic kindness and courtesy towards each other. So wrapping it up, wellness to me is extremely important. For my company, there is growing awareness, and we would be working a lot on these initiatives in the years to come.
Wonderful. And listening to everybody's comments, I feel that, the new normal is going to be more about, social connections, about, a sense of community to prevail. And maybe, in a pre-COVID world, we were maybe too occupied within our own selves. And I think that we've really realized the importance of, social connections, especially during the lockdown period. So it's really great to see how organizations are realizing the need for community to prevail and are actually taking steps to ensure the sense of community. And very wonderfully said, Hassan, that we don't really need to take very big initiatives. Sometimes it's just the small things that can really make a very big difference. So thank you very much. This winds up our first round of questions, and I would request Dr. Farah to please give a few comments and her own opinion as well on, what well-being is and how important it is for, organizations to align well-being with their vision and values. Ji, Dr. Farah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think this is absolutely heartwarming, the kind of efforts that have been made, enormous, small steps, person-centered, employee-centered. The whole organization is focusing on things that are required to address well-being. Definition of well-being, I think we're all aware of it, but it's living your life to the fullest, being able to manage your stress, being able to adapt, particularly in the times of change and uncertainty. For all three panelists, it seems like so much work has already gone into it. I think I just want to put this on the table because the research that was pre-COVID indicates, for example, in UK, over about 5 million workers out of the 31 million people in the workforce were suffering from CMDs or common mental disorder, meaning mental health issues, depression, anxiety, and the like. In the present circumstances, with the job insecurity, which we know increases the odds of reporting poor health, poor mental health, the working hours, the new sort of arrangements, the figures that we had pre-COVID indicate almost 84% of employees experiencing some kind of physical, psychological, or behavioral symptoms of poor mental health, where work was a contributing factor. We also completely understand, and I think this is a WHO study, about 1 trillion is the estimated cost to the global economy attributed to CMDs in a given year. Au contraire, $1 put into scaled up treatment for CMDs, there's a return of $4 in improved health and productivity. So it sounds like everything that's being done is sort of being streamlined. There's always been evidence demonstrating positive correlation between a mentally healthy workplace and employee engagement, staff morale, loyalty, innovation, productivity, and profits. But I think what I want to find out more in terms of, is there a gap? That being one. And the other, do you think this was more a reactive measure? And where would you like to take this in terms of being more preventive or being more sort of proactive about it? I would like to ask the second set of questions, and if I'd like to start with you, Hassan, if that's okay. Can you please share, I know you mentioned quite a few, but if you could give us some examples, some more sort of in-depth about Bestway Cement and well-being related good practices before COVID-19 and how you have built upon them or modified them.
Sure. So one of the best practice that we had, as I told in my intro, that we had an in-house counselor. the service was debated, and for now, right now, it is at the suspended status. I'm pushing it, and there is an awareness in the company that we should have it. The only feedback to this service can only come from the employees who benefit from this. So we, for the first time, we actually sent an anonymous survey to the organization, and we asked, has this helped you? And especially the qualitative part of the survey was very interesting, where people even said that the counselor has changed their life. They have someone to listen to. There were people who were not happy with the service, where they said she does not solve our problem. But probably that's an area where my jobs comes into play, that it is not her job to solve your problems. Her job is to escalate your problems to the management, and it's us, the HR department, who has to really make a business case for the things you guys want. Uh, a psychologist or a counselor probably does not have all the solutions, but provides a hearing and a therapeutic approach towards what was happening. I can give an example that once our counselor was conducting this very simple workshop in which all our laborers were participating, and me and my team just showed up at one of our plants, and when we showed up, the activity was going on in which you write your biggest grief on a piece of paper, you put it in a balloon, you fill this up, and then you tear apart that balloon. And as simple as that sounds, after doing that activity, and I also joined that activity, the workers felt much better, and they said something which, Richard, I'll translate for you in English, that the workers said, मैडम आ जाती हैं, हमसे बात कर लेती हैं, तो हम बहुत खुश हो जाते हैं और हल्के हो जाते हैं. So Richard, it goes like this: the ma'am comes once a month, and we talk, listens to us, we feel very lightened up, and we feel relaxed and acknowledged and heard too. So I would say pre-COVID, we were on a very right track, that we were providing this service in the organization. Your second part of question was, were we reactive? I would say yes, because this service was inherited from a company we acquired. Now, COVID came, we realized that the well-being and mental health part is something which needs dedicated efforts. So from here, I take it as the head of OD of this company. Organizational development is not possible if people are not in the right state of mind. Organization is people. So yes, I do see a lot of room for improvement, in which I have to dedicate a few people in my team. Like Richard in his intro said, that there is an employee relations person who is specifically dedicated towards mental health. So I cannot count on my external counselor to be there for my employees all the time. I'll have specialized people in my team who are responsible for what's going on. Maybe copy a few ideas from Richard, like a daily or a weekly, health tip, mental health tip of the week, etc. So a lot has left desired, I would say.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. I think maybe towards the end, when I'm wrapping it up, I can address this. I do have a couple of points. But before I do that, I'll ask the next question to you, Richard. If you could share your sort of policies, good practices, with some examples that you already have in place in ACCA. You've mentioned a few, but again, if we could go a bit deeper, also relevance to Pakistan. What would be different, for example? How do you, if you foresee any hurdles around that?
Okay, thank you very much for that question. So maybe I'll focus on the well-being champions. So, and just probably to frame that and to frame from your starting point, I think this is something that we were already looking at pre-COVID. So I don't think we have necessarily been reactive. I think what we've had to do is use what we had, find what we had, look to improve what we had, and probably accelerate some of the things that we were doing. And maybe it just helped us crystallize some of the things. And one of the things I mentioned there was the Wellbeing Champions, for example. And we are split. We're a global organization. We're split across any number of countries, one of which of our portfolios is MISA. That's where Pakistan sits. We also have individuals in Sri Lanka, Dubai, and Bangladesh as well. But all of the solutions that we've tried to come up with as far as possible, we've tried to make as applicable to all. As much as anything. So the Wellbeing Champion that sits in MISA, that supports MISA, is there to support employees in Pakistan and all of those different countries within that region. And their role really is to link in with myself, with the colleagues in the centre and the HR team, to basically champion well-being, to bring back ideas to us that are coming out of these countries, because everyone's doing this slightly localized and nuanced thing. So it's how can we bring back what they are learning, what they're doing, how they are responding to some of these things, so that we can improve it, and also just use these as a forum and as a function to help getting those messages out there, both in a consistent way and in a regular way, on top of the kind of more central communications that we're trying to do. And I think potentially, we had them in place last year. We had them in place before COVID. I think what's really happened now is this has helped shine a light on them in a different way, and probably people see them and are using them in a different way now. So to that point, I think it's been a really good example of something that's not that COVID has been a good thing for anybody. It's really enhanced the role that they've played. It's enhanced the spotlight that is on well-being, that is on mental health. And these are individuals, volunteers that are passionate about it. And I think that's the key to it, really. And as I say, all of the things that we're doing, we try and make as relevant as possible on a global basis. And therefore, when I refer to this type of activity, it's happening in Pakistan, it's happening in all countries across the world. And what we're trying to do is get that message out on a broad scale, and then use our local forums, use our local leadership forums to bring a more nuanced side to that.
Thank you very much for that, Richard. Once again, like you said, it's so critical that you were already positioned in the right sort of space to be able to prepare yourself and move forward and handle the situation better. I do have a couple of questions again, maybe towards the end. If I get a chance, I do want to ask more in terms of the difference between, say, well-being and mental health, and the people that you have on board who are working with this, as well as their role in the organizational development. So maybe if I get a chance at the end of this segment, I can come back.
Happy to.
So, thank you. So Alia, how has your organization responded in this pandemic? And once again, you've mentioned it briefly, but well-being and mental health difference, what you've incorporated, how you've coped, and how that's actually helped you deal with the impact of COVID-19.
Thank you for the question. A number of elements, actually, because we were pretty much one of the essential services. So the first challenge that we had, of course, was that our operations in the front office essentially is the front facing. And if all the employees were in, this actually meant that we were not able to have any kind of social distancing. So the first challenge for us was to define for the whole organization the roles, the positions, and also the people who needed to be in the offices, in the back offices, and the front offices, because the back support offices also require, and some of these, for example, you have the phone banking service. These are pretty much 24/7 services. And then the IT support services, which actually had to be escalated because there was a lot of focus on digitization, digital components and frameworks and how these were being utilized by the customers as well. So at this one time that we were looking at our employee base, and 50% of these were to stay at home, because of the cybersecurity components of banking, our core banking software cannot be given at home. So that meant some people had to be in office. So per force, we had to actually we had a BCP already in place, so it's not really reactive. We have had this for a few years now, but we never knew that it will be utilized for COVID and the way we had to utilize it. So we were able to segregate the number of employees. First, of course, we took out all those employees who were high risk. So they were absolutely not to come to work. And that was based on their comorbidities, the fact that, they were in a certain age group. So these people had to be taken out first. So those employees were told to stay at home, number one. Then we actually looked at how many of the segments and positions could be work from home, and that was done as well. So we had some of these components, and the remaining we had on alternate work arrangement, which meant that they were in office for a period of time, and then they would not be in office for a longer period of time. So that, and these two teams would never interact with one another, so that if one team had COVID, the other team could take over very clearly, seamlessly, and there was no disruption in our operations anywhere across Pakistan. And of course, we have Bahrain and China as well. So from that perspective, this was the reaction, it was a little bit reactive, but we had BCP, so it had been there. Now, from the wellness perspective, we have had a wellness program for the last 2 years now. And there are certain elements to it which link also to the OD initiatives. So there are a lot of activities which we take within that framework. Now, we had to modify those. For example, we had one component which was the availability of gyms for our employees, and the facility, a corporate facility with certain gyms in the cities, and the gyms closed. So that was one challenge. But the second challenge, which was much bigger, came from the insurance companies, because they would not cover COVID expenses. So we had to create a pool, which was a separate, segregated pool for all our employees, so that we could cover all of them. And that was essential, so that the lower paid tiers within the organization would not feel stressed that they had, and the COVID test, of course, is quite expensive. So we made sure that everybody had this comfort that you're all covered. So you don't need to think about that, number one. Number two, you don't need to think about your jobs either, because there was very clear communication that your jobs are secure and safe, and you are part of this organization and you're not going anywhere. We're all in this together. And this really has been the core message. We are all in this together, and we will make it work. So we started working a lot on communication, internal communications, which we were doing earlier as well, but we intensified those. And within those, we were looking at innovation. We were looking at digitalization. We were looking at how quickly we can convert areas which were not digitized into digitized versions. So a number of elements at the same time, and all of them working together, creating new teams. And these teams sort of cropped up. Some of these were organic, but a lot of these were actually coming out of the way we strategized in terms of how we wanted to reach out to people and how we wanted to make sure that the business did not suffer either. So both things worked very well, actually, at the end of the day.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. So like you said, it's definitely multi-pronged approach. It seems that everybody is united and recognize universal experience that we together. Just once again, just putting some figures there. But this is again a UK-based study conducted by the government. It says pre-COVID, 72% of workplaces have no mental health policy. 56% of people would not employ an individual who had a history of depression, even if they were the most suitable candidate. 27% of employees consider their organization does take a reactive approach to well-being. 92% of people with mental health conditions believe that admitting to these in the workplace would damage their career. I started off on this track, and I'm going to try and sneak in another sort of question here. We're talking about coaching, and Hassan is trained, he himself is an expert. All of you in your own capacity are working very, very successfully and managing humongous teams. How do you differentiate between sort of life coaching, hardcore mental health, and your in-house people who are trained to address the problems in the light of the present circumstances and post-COVID-19, when we are expected to have an increase in the number of mental health issues? The studies which are based on convenient sampling are already demonstrating a 10% increase. So we're talking distress to trauma to PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder. All of these people coming back with depression, anxiety, with this backdrop of them not wanting to, or maybe not feeling comfortable in sharing their information. How would you like to address this? And we can start with Hassan, if you would like to just briefly respond to this. It's a steel question, so.
Sure. So, all these sciences, coaching, counseling, mentoring, would need very common foundations, which is listening skills. So if you listen to someone, half of the problem is gone. The problem is that people don't feel acknowledged. Everyone has a certain level of ego. So as I said earlier, in a company of 2,000 people, there are 2,000 egos at a time. And it's very possible that most of those egos are fragile, because we come from a culture where there is a lot of collective unconsciousness about the way things are. We were ruled by the British, where they left position power. Your position is a guarantee of your respect, not your character, no matter where you are in the organization. So there is a lot of, I would say there are a number of cultural dilemmas that have made our individuals worthy of attention. And the whole equation needs to be solved in a way that, if you ask me, I will focus on the mid management of the organization. The middle tier of the organization is, in my view, the most critical part of the organization. The reason is they are going to be the leaders of the company in future. If you give them the right mindset, it's possible that, because an organization works like a triangle, most of the people are at the lower part of the triangle. That's where the strength is. Usually the C-suite is 5 to 10 people. The C-suite -1 is 20 people. The middle management is somewhere we need to give our attention to. We have recently done something called People Manager Toolkit. It's a leading by intent program by Skitma, which is a South African consultant. And for the first time, we were able to train our middle managers into developing a mindset of giving rather than taking. Our managers generally are trained that resource is at your disposal and you have to get the business out of the person. But they forget that if you work on the person, the output is naturally be there. The performance is an output of a person. So it was a 2 days program. We successfully concluded it, and I got some very good feedback on how people have been shown the mirror. People had this question during the meeting, in which during the training they asked me that there is a person on my team who has ethical issues and I'm not able to confront that person. And the same person came to me by the end of the training. I did not need to ask the question because my question was answered. It was a problem of my own courage and value system. So I saw the tables turning around during the 2 days. Now imagine the power of the same program if it is done across the organization and every manager becomes a therapist, a counselor, and someone who is true to his or her values and integrity. Eventually the whole organization's culture will start elevating itself and it will become a very humane place. In the last 3 years of my tenure in this company, we have had a few successes like this, in which the people related issues which were not really talked about are being given a due attention at the C level, at the board of directors, that why people matter to us, why some people should be retained, why talent matters to us, what makes a person better than the other. So all these things have been discussed, deliberated, and a number of opportunities are right in front of us to grab. So if you ask me, I will focus all my energies, or at least 80% of my energies, into developing the middle tier of the organization. One bad manager can really influence a team's culture, and one team culture, when it multiplies by a Chinese whisper, can go a long way in really polluting the organizational culture. So we need managers who are coaches, who are counselors, and who specialized or at least are abreast of what's going on in the wellness and mental health world.
Hassan, I would like you to answer a question from the audience, which is very relevant to what you've been talking about just now. And this Zishad is asking that what is the role of line managers and how can we make them responsible for the mental health of their team? So would you like to briefly answer this question as well? It relates to what you were talking about.
Yes, one word, accountability. I need to be accountable for my team. If there are, if they are facing mental health issues, they cannot fight two battles at a time. If let's say something is going on at their home and in their personal life, and I create an environment in the office which is equal to another battle, trust me, they won't be able to find two battles at a time. A battle at home and a battle at office. So at least our job as professionals is to make sure that when they come to office, they are given an environment where they are listened to, where they are respected, where their individual differences are not coming into the way of their growth. They are given constructive feedback. And most importantly, the managers are true to their values. And usually the organizational values are also very similar, integrity, respect, communication. But do we really do them? That's the point. So unless we hold our people accountable, these will just be nice fancy words written on the walls, and they'll just stay there. So accountability.
Right. Thank you so much, Hassan. Another very quick question. This is from Essen and Richard. I would like you to answer this question: that how can organizations maintain interpersonal connections and ensure collaboration efficiency while employees continue to work from home?
Very good question. Thank you for that. I think certainly we've benefited as an organization, ACCA has, by Microsoft Teams, Microsoft 365. We recently did quite a large scale upgrade of our infrastructure, our IT infrastructure. And I think certainly that has been a really important way for us to be able to integrate and to talk and to keep business moving in a more agile way than potentially it would have been had we not done that. We did certainly in certain offices have to migrate people onto laptops to enable them to work and enable them to actually work remotely and be able to be efficient and productive. On our Wellbeing Hub as well, as part of the overall COVID Hub information and Wellbeing Hub information, we've also provided a lot of IT guidance, a lot of meeting guidance. Again, we're all learning, I would say, about these new tools. Zoom, for example, I know we were talking about that just before the call. It's a pretty new technology to some of us, and Microsoft Teams was for us. So we've been trying to guideline managers, business leaders and stakeholders, both internal and external, on how to conduct meetings, the most efficient way to conduct meetings, some of the challenges and differences you might find to, I guess, being able to be in the office and pop round to someone's desk. We're all having to find new ways through this. So it's about helping people, supporting people, finding guidance, and also showing flexibility in the times that people are working and the times that people are having to work, given childcare responsibilities or other things that they've got going in their life while they were either in lockdown or various stages of that. So it's just trying to be as supportive as we possibly can, try and get information out there as quickly as we can about the technology that's available to us, and really just be it was a really good word that was used earlier, as empathetic as possible in how we're having the meetings, in the structure of those, and also I think we're also just trying to also make it as interactive and as fun as possible as well. Again, we are all our employees, we understand, are working probably harder than ever, in different ways than ever, doing things in different ways. We're asking them to be agile, and therefore we're also trying to make sure that they are experiencing some different, experiencing this for what it is. I know, in a personal example, our HR team, we must have about 30 odd people based predominantly in the UK. At various points, we have a Thursday call at which we talk nothing of work, and actually what it's done is we've started to choose topics that have really got us to know each other better. Some of them are quite silly, some of them are quite funny. We all have a laugh and a good time, and I think we've all come away from that going, we want to continue this. We've got to know our colleagues far better, far more intimately. People have opened up. So it's about trying to do all of these different things to keep those connections going, and make the connections continue. But certainly, being a global organization, COVID has had a certain benefit to some, in the sense that people are more agile in when they're able to take meetings and what they're able to do. So what we're trying to do at the moment is harness what we can from all of these different experiences, so that when we come out the back end, we are taking the positives away from this, and we are learning from this.
Right. Thank you, Richard. I'll quickly move on to the third round of questions. We are getting a lot of questions from the audience as well. So we'll try to address as many questions as we can towards the end of the session. Starting off with the third round of questions, social class or the financial security that a person carries with himself or herself, and gender are seen as two significant protective factors in the context of mental health. So Alia, as a female on the panel, can you please share what strategies address the risks, the issues, and concerns of female workforce in your organization? You're on mute, Alia.
Sorry about that. That's the statement of 2020. You are on mute.
Yes.
Right. So thank you for the question. I think one of the important elements in terms of gender, especially, and in terms of how it impacts organizations, how the components of gender are also integrated or not within organizations, and how we actually are able to view them as part of an organization, as males or females. It's extremely important. I think I'm very passionate about this as well. From the social perspective and from the risk perspective, I think the risk for females is far greater in COVID than it is for males. And the reasons are even otherwise when you look at a similar position, and the position is held by two persons, one is male and one is female, and one person has to be let go of by the organization. Generally, it's the female who is chosen as the one who should leave. And the reasons are never that she's a female. The reasons are always, okay, she has this problem and she has this issue, so it's better, and she won't be able to go and meet people the way the male would be able to. So this has been a challenge which I actually faced in the UN as well. And we did a lot of work on that as well, that how do we actually go beyond the real patriarchy, and which actually is worldwide, it's not just in Pakistan. So within our own organization, one of the factors that we have been very, very cognizant of is working on gender. So it just doesn't mean working on the numbers. It means having the females on the table, inclusion especially. So gender mainstreaming, one of the key components of, for example, is that in all the processes within HR or otherwise in committees, we actually were able to, first of all, have a strategy, which is a gender strategy for the next 3 years, have it in place, which has segments and components, and these components link not just with HR, they actually relate to the business function. They relate to how products are created within the bank, how these approach both genders in terms of their impact. And it's not just about creating an account, current account, or a saving account for a female. It actually goes beyond that. Looking at committees, looking at representation of females in all committees, and not having any committee without having the presence of gender, and both genders or the third gender if you have that in the organization. So essentially looking at all these aspects is important. Then again, having a very humanistic, empathetic approach. Whenever a female sends a resignation, we have a special team and we approach them, and we don't ask them once why you are leaving. We ask them and we encourage them, okay, we don't want you to leave. So what is the challenge? Why are you leaving? And what is the challenge? And what is the challenge? So we keep asking, we keep digging, because a lot of times these resignation may have one reason, and the reason may be something completely different. And you need to sort of dig deeper and go into the real reality of what that person is facing. And we have been able to successfully manage these multiple situations, and one step at a time. So you keep on working at various levels within the processes, within all components of work. We really need to think gender and think inclusion and think diversity as one of the main elements which will take us forward as the bank of the future. So that's really a commitment, and that really comes from how we look at gender. So I think that that commitment is there from the organization's perspective as well. So that has really helped.
Wonderful. Thank you, Alia. Hassan, my next question is from you. If we look at the cement industry, we have, different kinds of employees to look after. So, for example, we have the factory workers, which is the labor class, and then we have the executives. So do you think well-being challenges are different for different types of employees, and how exactly can we, strategize to kind of deal with the challenges each class of workers deal with? And can you also put some examples from your organization on how it has been addressing such employee concerns, especially post-COVID?
Sure. So a segmented approach is the way to go about it. Yes, we do have the workers as well as the executives. Some initiatives are for all and some are specifically for the segment. So see, the workers are usually living in the hostels, and they usually go to their families once a month or maybe twice a month. So we have provided them, usually the factories are at a place where there is ample space to run, jog, play football, cricket, swim, go to the gym, etc. The executives, on the other hand, have, they are in this very nice office in F7. They have the access to very nice fancy cafes in this Jinnah supermarket. So you have to think what kind of person you have and what you can do for that person. A few examples. That's also a segment. From the last 2 years, we have started celebrating the Women's Day. This was never heard of in the company I'm working in. So, taking the ladies out for a nice lunch at Monal, giving them personalized giveaways, just acknowledging their efforts through an organization wide email. However, my personal point of view is that it is about opportunity. So I would agree with Alia that you would need to work on those systems, and then gender becomes out of question, and whoever is competent flourishes. We have a few examples in which ladies have made it to very senior positions like head of budgeting, treasury, and reporting, or the head of legal, or the manager of internal audit, which was, again, I would say, in our industry, this was not very common a few years ago. So there is a growing awareness, and this is not only a success of Bestway Cement, this is a success of Pakistan, in which has female representation at the top. And then you don't need to take very fancy initiatives. It is just more about listening to them, having a dignified environment in place. I'll give you an example in which when I joined this company, in my own team there were 9 people, and 8 out of them were ladies, and there was only one guy. So, and that guy was, he became too quiet because he was surrounded by ladies. So my gender target was to reduce the number of ladies and maybe bring in a little gender balance. So uh, there were a couple of natural attritions, and the ladies moved for their careers. We hired male management trainees who were already with us, and fortunately both the ladies speak highly of our culture. They want to join us. One of them went to a Fortune 500 company. One of them went for her maternity leave. Both of them say good things about our culture, that we have been able to provide a dignified, a reasonable environment to them. So I would say you don't need to think of very fancy initiatives. It is about how you make others feel. So whether it's your labor class, your gender, each and every segment demands a different set of mindset. So that is the way to go. Think of the people, what are their needs, put them in the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. What a worker demands, maybe a little bit, a Bestway branded bottle, which we have just distributed across the company. That person will take it to the family, show that I work for this big company. It will be motivating for him. For some other people, you take them out, have a team building day, etc. So a segmented approach is good. At the end of the day, it is initiative for the sake of initiative. It is about how actually people are feeling on the ground.
Thank you, Hassan. Richard, my next question is from you. That young and emerging professionals are one of the most vulnerable population in the post-pandemic era when it comes to having issues related to mental health. So, in your opinion, are the immediate steps which we can take to help this set of population?
That's a very good and probably quite a tricky question to answer, because, as you say, they absolutely are probably most at risk in terms of their mental health. I think the number of things that we can do would range from probably thinking about how we resource roles and how we make sure that we are inclusive to those types of situations. Make sure that when we are thinking about our balance, our headcount, that we are doing so in a way that is inclusive to all of those different groupings of people. Within our organization at the moment, I would say, we also have to think about how we help them grow and develop, how we help them kind of move through the organization and grow with the organization. So that will be really important. Make sure that they're not I guess, when we think about our structures and our team sizes and our org design, that we feature and make sure that they play a part in that, and we get the right balance of different individual roles at the right levels and a range of different levels to make sure that we are thinking about all of our different populations. They will be one of a number of probably that are feeling most vulnerable at the moment. But again, I think it's doing so with a balance and a thoughtfulness, not just to them, but all different populations, all different, and with diversity and inclusion at the front and center of that as well.
Right. Thank you, Richard. Okay, so since we are running short of time, I will jump to the audience questions. And so there is one question which is related to destigmatizing mental health. And I would like Dr. Farah, you to answer this question. How comfortable are, generally people in talking about mental health issues, and especially if we talk in an organizational context? We're not really comfortable in, talking to our colleagues about, mental health issues which we are facing. So how can, organizations or how can in-house counselors handle this situation?
Thank you very much for the question. I think stigma is definitely one of the issues because of which mental health issues are underreported or camouflaged. How can it be done? I think Mr. Hassan just mentioned mid-level management. Just a suggestion, I think if we were to start off with the leaders top down, the C-suite actually using this platform and being vulnerable, actually we could share our own experiences, talk more about this universal experience, which is more personalized. There are many organizations, I believe, who've done this, including Verizon and Morrison, several others as well, where they were also positioned really well. The person top down would talk about things. This is pre-COVID. So they were positioned well in terms of talking about what they were experiencing in terms of trauma, in terms of depression or anxiety, or things that were happening at home. A very fine balance between work and life, which has been sort of merged with this experience, this episode of COVID-19. So we'll probably be reevaluating a lot of this, but recognizing that we're all vulnerable, top down, I think would be, and being honest about what we're feeling. It was mentioned accountability again, but being honest, sharing one's own experiences, I think could help people normalize their own mental health and destigmatize a lot of this.
Right, thank you. A question is from Hassan. So Fahad is asking that, time management is becoming, something which is very critical for, especially, in a post-COVID world, because we are working from home and there are really no office timings. So this can really, get stressful at times. So what kind of, reporting should be in place? So, should such kind of, problems be reported to the the line manager or to the HR manager, or how does this work in your organization?
If he has the answer, please let me know. That's an area I also need to work on. This is
Right.
a challenge.
It is a
This is a
challenge,
big
right?
challenge.
Okay, so I will just move on to another question from the audience, and this question is okay, so this question is talking about anxiety. So a lot of people, they face a lot of anxiety, and, they're unable to express their emotions. So whether they're sad or they're happy, and, especially, in times. So for example, if a candidate is going for an interview and, because of anxiety, he cannot really, speak or express himself. So how can, a person deal with this if he feels that he's overly emotional and cannot handle his or her emotions intelligently? Yes, Hassan, would you like to answer this question?
I think professional therapists is an emerging profession in Pakistan. It is perfectly all right to speak to a professional therapist. I have done that as part of my study of psychotherapy, and I was required to complete 50 hours of therapy. I have done some part of it, and honestly, it helps. It does help when you speak your heart out to a trained professional therapist.
Right, thank you. Alia, I would like to you to take this question. This is about harassment which employees face in organizations, and it's of course it's more relevant for females, but we see that harassment can or verbal. And male and female both can, face harassment at workplace, and it really has an impact on, the well-being of employees. So how do we address, such cases in an organizational context?
Right. So harassment is a reality in most of the organizations, and it's a reality in our society as well. We do have a law by the government of Pakistan, which is very much in place, against workplace harassment. So I think mostly women do need to understand that for working women, there's already a law, which was initially, it was 2010, 2017, they made some amendments to it. We, as organizations within Pakistan, are required by law to have harassment, protection from harassment policies. And we are also required by law to have standing committees, so that we are able to have a mechanism in place to investigate, and also to have some kind of penalty. There is also an FIR you can actually have at the end of your own internal process. So for our bank, we've had it now for about a year and a half now. We have had some cases. We have zero tolerance, which means that the persons involved were laid off. And this happened after we had the legal due process. So it's not that you are approached by a male or a female and you immediately make a decision. You have to go through first an investigation and then through the due process. So both components have to be there. There are two committees which look after both components. And then we also have an appeal committee, which is absolutely separate from these two. So you need to have mechanism in place, but you also need to have communication. And that's one thing which we have been doing, and I've been doing myself constantly. Having gender sensitization sessions, having sessions with females separately also, so that they understand the power and the abuse of power component, understanding also how these power relationships work, what their conduct requires to be, what kind of evidence, if they are faced with a situation, that they are supposed to keep, and not, for example, receiving messages at midnight, and the girls would generally be scared, be uncomfortable with it, and delete it. So letting them know, okay, you need to keep these because this actually provides you a protection as well, because there is a process that you go through eventually. And also encouraging other people around. If you see something like that, you are strongly encouraged. If even the main person involved is scared, you are encouraged to talk about it. And we have had cases where somebody else actually approached us. Okay, there is something happening there and you need to look at it. So we've had a lot of, there was a spike and then it sort of fizzled out because people realized also within the organization that there is an absolute zero tolerance. And there are also cases, and I've been doing this now for, 20 years plus, there are always cases where this is misused as well. You need to be able to identify those, and for that also you need to have zero tolerance. So both ways, you need to be fair, your system has to be in place, and we've been able to do that quite successfully.
Right, thank you, Alia. One last question from the audience, and Richard, I would like you to take this question. It's a very interesting one that, so throughout we've been talking about how important it is for line managers to ensure the mental health of their employees. But this question is saying that how do we ensure the mental health and well-being of the line managers who are actually now, managing a blend of, team which is working from home and some which are working from office. So the line manager is accountable for the performance of his team. So what can we do to, ensure the well-being of these line managers?
So yeah, very good question. I think in the same way, they are line managers, but you have a hierarchy of line managers. So it's making sure that as you go up, you don't lose sight of that, making sure our leadership group, our executive team are fully supporting their direct reports in the same way that these line managers are doing so for their teams. In our case, making sure that this is something that they're aware about, they're asking the right questions about, they're interested in, and making sure that the conversations that they're having are broader than just say operational, the operational type questions. You know, making sure that they are a bit more personal, a bit more empathetic if they're not, and really just ensuring that they are also following the guidance that we're asking everybody else to do so. You know, they are the leaders, they are the role models of some of these things, and I'm really pleased to say that through this, you know, the whole organisation of ACCA has really shown a great amount of empathy. Our leaders are communicating regularly with both their teams about, you know, diversity and inclusion, or mental health, or, you know, well-being, and trying to cascade those messages as our HR team and our people community and our people function, whether that be through our culture and engagement team specifically. And we've recently launched a series of a new behavior framework for our organization. So we're really just trying to tap into some of these cultural things to make sure people feel that at all levels of the organization, they can go to people for support, you know, whether it's a mental aid first aider if they're a bit reluctant to speak to a line manager in the first instance. It's about using the communities, the wellbeing community, about being able to speak to their HR business partner, whoever that may be, at all levels. But to come back to your point, I don't think we're specifically targeting those kind of more senior leaders or the line to make sure that the line managers are getting the support they need. We're trying to make sure at all levels of the organisation we're getting a consistent messaging out there so that everybody feels that that they are and can be heard in relation to well-being, in relation to mental health, and trying to open up as many channels as possible to people.
Right. Thank you, Richard. So in the end, Dr. Farah, I would just like you to give a few remarks so we can wrap up today's discussion.
Well, I think it was an incredible discussion. I've learned a lot, I think, in terms of best practices, collective wisdom. There's a lot to learn from everything that's been put in place. They're prioritizing people, building strong relationships. We're talking about empathy. I think engagement, embracing. I'd like to add just, you know, probably for mental health to find its way into organizations, we need to have ROIs, so return on investment. And it will eventually have to be a business case for mental good health to become part of an integrated system, which is already functional. But if there is any room for people who are going to be returning after COVID-19 back to work with their problems to discuss them, having policies, having arrangements which would allow them to be in the cushion zone and not necessarily move into the caution zone, building their resilience. Close at that. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Dr. Farah. I would like to thank all the panelists for joining us today and, you know, sharing your learnings with us. And I would like to thank the wonderful audience for their questions. And thank you very much. And hopefully we will be coming on board again to, you know, to discuss more, you know, to gain more insights into, you know, topics related to mental health and well-being of employees in an organizational context and otherwise as well. Thank you so much to all these esteemed panelists. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Thank you.